When we think about this inflationary environment, and we are expecting President Biden to speak about inflation in just about 40 minutes time or so, how does Bitcoin work when you're looking for a hedge? Is it an inflationary hedge?
Okay, so it certainly is an inflationary hedge, and that's because scarcity is actually built into the asset itself. But I think, there definitely has been some mounting concern that inflationary pressures will cause a drop in demand for risk assets. And unfortunately, right now, that does somewhat include Bitcoin, because traditionally there has been a reasonable amount of leverage that has been used, for example, in leverage long positions in Bitcoin. We actually, though, have been seeing a reduction in leverage being used towards long positions in the past month or so, which actually is a good thing in terms of tempering some of the volatility that has happened and come with this asset class. But certainly, you can look at it. Bitcoin by its, design is naturally a hedge against inflation,
Hmm.
and we are certainly very excited to see how this asset continues to mature, as we see sort of where things land in terms of when interest rates ultimately start to rise.
Well, let's talk about Bitcoin's relationship to other assets as well, because when you look at the correlation to risk assets like the equity market, it's actually very, very tightly correlated. We have a chart on the Bloomberg terminal that just shows the correlation. It's a ratio of about 0.33. So basically, as the stock market goes, Bitcoin also goes, or vice versa. Do you think that Bitcoin is really just another risk asset that will trade in tandem with risk by and large?
So no, for the time being, I mean, it has certainly been trading alongside like that, but we do think ultimately, as adoption of this asset class continues to mature, I mean, like we've certainly seen institutions, different governments are also looking into the space as well, and as adoption continues to accelerate, we do think that it will be a lot less correlated, particularly as leverage continues to leave the system. I mean, if we even look at so for example, the credit market is $123 trillion of the credit market, and about 15 trillion of that is negative yielding debt right now. And so that is ultimately not an asset on your balance sheet, that's a liability. And we think as if Bitcoin were to capture even 2 to 3% of that market, that would be incredibly accretive to the price.
Yeah.
And we do think that there will be a decoupling from how it sort of trades
Yeah.
right now once we
So
see sort of where rates ultimately go.
So, Sue, obviously volatility is an issue not just with Bitcoin, but cryptocurrencies in general. And another issue, of course, in mining in particular, is the environmental concern. How are you addressing that at HUD 8?
Yeah. So Hut 8, we take not only a top-down approach to considering the environment as not only a shareholder but also a stakeholder in our business, but also a bottom up. So going fully carbon neutral is certainly on our, something that we're working towards. But we also look at
Do
how
you
are
have a
the
target date for that?
not yet that we've announced to the market, but it's something that we're certainly evaluating right now. We will
Okay.
have updates for you guys shortly on that. But we also look at little things from a bottom up approach to our business. So, for example, we've electrified all of our vehicles on the ground. Instead of using gas powered, we now have electrical vehicles. We've partnered with a company to collect the styrofoam and some of the packaging that comes that wraps around the miners. There's quite a bit of packaging that miners show up in. And so we've partnered with a company that actually collects some of that styrofoam and then resells it into the market instead of that waste going to the landfill. So even looking at little things like how do we reduce our landfill footprint are things that we're doing, obviously with the environment in mind. We also have a third site going up in North Bay, Ontario, and a portion of the energy derived from that will be steam powered. And also the grids that we're connected to in Alberta, a portion of the energy from those grids are actually solar and wind. It's
Interesting.
about 25 to 30%. So those are some of the things that HUD 8 is certainly looking at doing, again,
Yeah.
to consider the environment
Right.
as a shareholder in this business, and ultimately
Yeah.
dispel some of the fact that Bitcoin mining is bad for the environment.